Then,
Welcome back to episode 6, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Martin Brady, who is a mental performance consultant and founder of Built to Lead Mental Transformation Coaching, one of the best in the game. And before I hand over to Martin, I want to say that Martin is actually the guy that I say to everyone who's got me on the path that I'm going. I started with Martin, about 3 years ago now at this stage, I believe, give or take.
yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah, I went to him and it's probably in as low a point as it had been in a long time. And with Martin's help, ultimately, as we all know, it just changed. Everything changed, put me on the path that I'm going on to be able to just work on what we are working on, to be able to bring this podcast to you. And yeah, so Martin, thank you for me anyway, as a first and foremost. And now introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about who you
Yeah,
are, where it all started, what you do.
yeah. Well, do you know what? I suppose the nuts and bolts of what you shared there is probably more than enough as an intro. Our game and our bread and butter is to help people to move from that position where, the potential that they have mightn't look like it's really possible at a moment in life, and we help them to unlock that and see that. Yeah, where it all started from me. So where I am today, how I'd introduce myself is I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, and I'm the author of my own book, Change Your Jacket, Methods from a Military Performance and a Sniper Coach on how to change your mindset. That's not a bad little kind of like tagline for being able to
Sounds
introduce
you
myself as well,
you've practiced
because
it in
yeah.
fairness.
So now people know that I'm a performance coach, they know that I'm a military sniper, and they know that I help people to change their mindset. So it's a nice little tagline just for attacking everything in one mouthful. But yeah, that's where it all started for me in this game was, back as far as 2003, I joined the military. I was very underweight. Definitely not what you would call an alpha male by any stretch of the imagination. Whenever I joined the military, I was the youngest in my recruit platoon. I still didn't shave. I went through 9 months recruit training and not having to use a single razor. So that would give you a kind of an insight into where I was in terms of my physicality. But as we know, your physicality has a big knock-on effect your mentality and vice versa. So I was in a position where I felt that I need to prove myself. I need to prove myself. I need to become someone. I need to establish a reputation. And I went on this journey of enhancing my physicality first and foremost, but then put myself in environments that really challenged me. I was promoted to the rank of corporal, one of the youngest in the defence forces at the time to ever be promoted to the rank of corporal. I was just 19 years old. And I was awarded the best overall soldier on that course. And that was a course at the time that had ex-Army Ranger Wing. It had snipers, guys that were much more experienced than me. And to stand out in that kind of environment took a lot, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to achieve that. Then I went on to become a sniper, which is an 85% failure rate. And again, I passed that course with distinction, which is extremely tough to do, but I put a lot of pressure on myself. And where did that bring me into the work that I do today? It's because throughout those achievements, I realized that I didn't enjoy a huge amount of it, which a lot of men probably can relate to whenever they listen to this, because I always felt that I needed to prove myself. I felt
Yeah,
deep down that I wasn't really good enough, and that if I achieve enough outside of myself, people will start to respect me, people will start to look up to me, and hopefully that will make me feel that I'm actually good enough. So pressure was driving a huge amount of the achievements that I actually had in my military career. And even previous to that, where I was an international boxer, putting myself under pressure was what drove so much of those achievements from me. And I got to a point where I looked back and I said to myself, I'm achieving, but I'm not happy. I don't like a lot of what I'm doing. And I realized that I'd fell into that trap that so many men can fall into, where I was
absolutely.
performing on the outside, but inside I felt like I'm not enjoying any of this. And everything was just driving from pressure and urgency and overwhelm.
And it's funny you say that because exactly what you've said there is what I've been working through myself over the past couple of months. You
Mm-hmm.
hit the nail on the head. You've accomplished and you've experienced all these different things, but not at one point were you any happier than when you didn't have any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually something we have seen ourselves with a lot of clients too. It's always this like laser focus on what the next thing is. And like my kind of philosophy now is there's pride, but there's no complacency. So like you need to be proud in the moment. You need to be like content to a degree with what you've achieved. It doesn't mean you have to stop and you can't keep reaching forward. Well, I personally have found that that distinction is tough because you know yourself, like you said, all the accolades you've put together at this stage, it was always about the next thing,
Hmm.
and you'll be happy
It,
when that next thing happens.
yeah. And it's what's driving you to achieve that next thing is the most important thing, and it's the biggest gap. You know, people speak about the know and doing gap, whereas there's a much bigger gap that so many men are missing out. That's not the know and doing gap. It's the why am I doing it gap.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it I want to do, and why is it that I want to do that? And that's a big gap that so many, you know, we work predominantly with business owners to break their financial ceilings because they obviously want to create more within their life. But why do they want to create it? What's driving it? A lot of the time, as you would know, Lee, if I'm working with a business owner and they feel overwhelmed and they feel detached from themselves and they feel like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders, a lot of the times they just want to feel like they have a bit of space within their day. They want to feel like they have a calm mind, and they want to feel like that they haven't got the weight of the world on their shoulders and they can just enjoy tomorrow. You know, only last month I spoke to one of the guys in our program. He set this goal of buying this sports car, very expensive sports car. It's something he wanted since he was a child, you know. He's like, I always
Yeah.
wanted a sports car. And, you know, I was like, look, if you're financially in a position to buy the sports car, then what's stopping you buying the sports car? So he went and he bought the sports car. And I said to him, well, how do you feel? You got the sports car. And I said, did it fulfill you? And he said, a little bit. And I said, remember that for everything you chase outside of yourself in life. The answer will always be a little bit. The next thing you might want is a villa in Portugal. It'll fulfill you a little bit. You might want a Rolex. It'll fulfill you a little bit. Okay. Every time you say a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, it's because you're moving away from what you believe. You're moving towards what you believe will fulfill you, but sometimes it's the wrong thing that's actually driving it. You know.
And how do you get through to someone what they should be chasing, what is going to bring true fulfillment? How do you help them break that barrier?
You see, chasing there is even the key word that you mentioned because we're all chasing something outside of ourselves at some stage, all right? And if you think about when you chase something, what happens?
You laser vision, you have to get it. You
David,
get
you
there.
said it there. What happens?
You get some purpose.
Okay, it runs away from you. If you
Yeah.
chase a dog, if a dog chases you, okay, you run. So, for example, right, I worked with a guy last year, and he had this financial ceiling that was really holding him back from progressing his business. He tried all of the usual stuff, you know, the usual strategies, whatever, but it kept coming back to him. He had a financial ceiling that he couldn't see, and every time, whenever he earned a little bit more, he always seemed to come back to the same position. And it was like he was earning the same couple of bob and then getting back to where he was. And it was just this was just the story of his life, you know. And one of the beliefs that was driving so much of his actions is that I always feel that I need to chase money. I was like, okay, well, money will keep running away from you if you feel like you need to chase money. Every single one of us are being pulled towards something, right? Every single man is listening to this podcast now. There's something pulling you in life, whether you know it or not. But sometimes we can't see that because it's camouflaged by all of the things that we feel that we should be chasing instead. So you asked the question there is how do we find what we are chasing? Well, if you stop and ask yourself the question, if I didn't have to chase, if there was nothing outside of me that I felt that I needed to prove to other people, what would I truly want to do with my life? How would I like my day to actually look? You know, for me, I love having freedom and space within my day. Like I collect my son now from school after this podcast. You know, and some people might look at that as something really simple, but for me, it's having that space within my day, psychological space, time and freedom space. I love having that within my life, but it's not something I was chasing. It's something that pulled me because whenever I have that, brings out a different level of thinking. So if I go in and write a book, and we spoke off early a moment ago about events and stuff that we're creating and ideas that we want to tap into over the next year, that stuff comes whenever I have space within my day. So I know
Yeah.
the next thing that wants me in life and I want, that will pull me in the right moment when I'm in the right state and I have that space, you know.
And I think, Dave, you had a question that I think links in quite nicely to this as well. I think it was fear of failure, right? Because that, I think that is quite directly linked to everything on the opposite side.
And also imposter syndrome. I'm interested in it. So just to give you some background, Martin, why I'm interested in that question. I was a CrossFit coach for 7.5 years, and when I was in that, like the purpose was amazing, and I was doing one course, and one course was like, "Why do you want to do this?" It was an expensive course in mentorship, and I said, "Oh, I just want to be one of the best CrossFit coaches in the world," type thing. And so then I felt good in it, I was good in it, and then CrossFit kind of took a dive a little bit, and I wasn't so sure investing my whole future into the hands of another brand. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of moving towards now more men's performance coaching, and especially young and aspiring fathers. So again, the purpose of that is me and my partner Becky, we're together 8.5 years, so we know we want to start a family any day now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm definitely getting pulled in that direction, because as a 32-year-old man, that's just kind of where my head is at every day. But changing niche in coaching, even though it's the same thing, performance through health is my thing. I do have that fear of, it is, I would say, definitely imposter syndrome, more so a fear of failure. But where does that come from, do you
Yeah.
think?
Well,
And how does one overcome it? I think it's important for me, but also for anyone else listening as well who has ambition.
yeah. Well, if we start even with you, all right, and then we tap into where it comes from. But when you say, okay, I have this fear of failure that I want to make this pivot, like if you treated me like I'm a dummy and I have no idea what you're talking about, and you were to explain that fear and explain that imposter syndrome to me, where you're trying to like teach me on what it's like to live with that, how would you explain it?
I think it's kind of walking the walk. When I was a CrossFit coach, I was like, I coach CrossFit online programs and in person, and I'm doing CrossFit for 3 hours a day as well. Trying to be the CrossFit athlete. Um, I do definitely feel that pull, towards, if me and Becky are lucky enough to have a family, can't wait
Mm-hmm.
for it. It's definitely, again, what I feel like I'm being pulled towards. But I'm not a father yet. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I coach young and aspiring fathers, which is what our
Mm-hmm.
business mentor told me to say, type thing. And I get it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have a kid yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where the imposter syndrome kind of comes out of. I know, again,
Mm-hmm.
business is just about helping the person solve the problem that they have. So I think that's where it's at. I think I'll be able to relate to these people a lot more, again, if I'm lucky enough to have a young family. But I think that's where it's at. And also just changing lanes that I never thought I would change. I'm definitely in a
Mm-hmm.
bit of an identity shift right now also. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and if you even look at the imposter syndrome there that you experience, okay, it's purely identity led, right? Because we have 13 rules in the mind that work for us, that are against us. And one of the most powerful rules of the mind is that it has to act in line with who I believe myself to be. So for you, if you believe yourself to be a CrossFit coach, and I'm not a dad, but I want to coach dads, and I believe I can help dads because I can understand men and I can understand a lot of the challenges that men are experiencing. And I think to myself, if I can understand that these men are experiencing these challenges and they have children, well, Jesus, I'm thinking about myself right now and I want to be a dad. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I want to help these guys now. I shouldn't have to wait till I'm a dad so that I can actually help dads, because I know that's the type of person I can help. But for you, it's that question in your mind, but I'm not a dad. So there's this conflict in identity. And that's where a lot of the time imposter syndrome can really stem from, because your mind can't hold conflicting beliefs. And when it can't hold conflicting beliefs, it will always revert to default, which is going to be the identity of who I believe myself to be. So in your mind, it's like, okay, I want to coach dads because like this is something I think about every single day. It's so important to me, for so many different reasons. And I want to help other men to be the best version of themselves because, it's going to help them to have a fulfilling family life as well. But a part of me says, but I'm not a dad. So naturally, there's going to feel like that element of imposter syndrome. And I always say to people, okay, but when you experience imposter syndrome like that, it's not like you don't have to justify why it is that you want to do something. You might want to coach men because you're like, you know what, I had such a good relationship with my dad. You know, and whenever I look at the impact that he had on me, I want to help men to be that person themselves. And if they're not happy with themselves, if they feel unfulfilled, they can't be that person with kids. And I want to, so you can still go and you can coach men without that. But if we revert back to where this all stems from, where does the fear of failure stem from? Where does imposter syndrome stem from? Well, from the day we're born, we don't have a fear of failure. And we definitely don't have an element of imposter syndrome, right? You don't have an 11-month-old kid that says, well, look, I can't go and play football because of, never, yeah, so they don't have that, all right? So we develop this. We develop it through our senses, what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. And from the day you were born, all of the information that we experience day to day, it's going into your subconscious mind. And that controls 96% of all of the actions that we take every single day, drives every single action that we take. And for most people right now, if they have a fear of failure around doing something, right, it goes back to a period of their life whenever they first experienced that feeling within their physical body. And your body stores it and remembers it. It's like when you think a thought, that information is sent straight onto the body, and the body will accept it. It'll send that information back up to the mind, and the mind will say, okay, message received, and it'll monitor your body to keep you in that state. You mentioned imposter syndrome there and that fear of failure. Last year, I had a lady and she was speaking on a stage in Norway, multiple different language barriers she had to overcome. So straight away, that triggered a state of worry and stress and fear. What if this all goes wrong? What if because she was told, you need to slow down your speaking. Okay, you need to speak like you're speaking to a Norwegian person. You need to speak like you're speaking to a Portuguese person. She wasn't confident standing on stage as was. I know whenever she's been given rules of how we want you to perform, that just completely overwhelmed the system. So for her, she started to have these feelings of what if I fail? Because in the past there was evidence to show that she is not comfortable standing up and speaking in front of people. There's evidence to show that she doesn't feel that she belongs on that stage. Now, when we actually worked with her on that, the day before that speaking event, she went out for a little run, just a light run, just to kind of get out and see a bit of the city. And this lady's a runner, like she can run marathons. But after about 2 kilometers in, her body's starting to tighten up. She said, I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. I feel I got cramps in my legs. And I said, listen back to what you said. You said, I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. Your body will take up the posture of exactly what you are saying to yourself. So right now, you feel like your whole body's cramping up. It's purely down to your thought process in this moment. And yes, we can link fear of failure. We can link imposter syndrome back to different stages of life. Okay. But for people like us, and for the men that are listening to this, it comes down to key moments in life where you want to step up and you perform. Key moments. Okay. And it's during those key moments, what you're saying to yourself is the message that's been passed on to the body. You know, I only recorded a reel this morning for social media, but last year I was speaking at an event. And whenever I came off the stage, I walked out into the foyer and there was, I was walking to the toilets and I heard a name, a guy call my name. And I looked back and it was a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in over 3 years. And he set up this new business. And there was all stalls out there for them to pitch their business to the audience inside the room, right? Whenever they came out in their tea breaks. And he was showing me his new business on his phone, showing me the website, showing me all the services. Like, this is brilliant. I goes, Jesus, this is incredible. Like, and I was like, you must be killing it. And he said, that's the thing, Martin, I'm not. He said, I can't get in front of the right people no matter what I try. I'm coming to events like this all the time. I said, you know what? The lady who's hosting this event, I'll introduce you to her. And the next time they're running these, she would only be delighted to get you on stage because that would be brilliant. Like for you to even like present a lot of this information to the audience in there, it's probably a better audience for you than it is for me. And he said, no, forget it. I was like, no, come on, I'll introduce you. And he said, no, I'll hook up with her on LinkedIn. Okay. And I left her that day and I thought to myself, he's missed a massive opportunity here. He's missed a massive opportunity. Now, it was in that moment what he was saying to himself. He's like, I'm doing everything. Okay, I'm turning up the events like this, but he wasn't doing that one key action. He was going 80% of the way there, but he wasn't going that extra 20%. And that extra 20% is where that fear of failure, where that imposter syndrome causes people to fall flat on their face. And it's in those key moments is what you're saying to yourself is going to dictate those outcomes.
Mm, love it. So,
And
Lee,
it's
not to take your next question away from you, I'm sure you are going to ask it, but Lee, if you are going to ask this question in a bit, we'll wait till then. But then the next question is, how do you overcome it? It sounds like it is those kind of mantras and those kind of rituals that you may have before a key moment like that. But yeah, anyway, Lee, sorry, go ahead there.
no, go for it. I was
Definitely
just
want
going to
to
add to
bit
it.
of a touch on that. Good.
I was just going to add to it, that is something that I would see myself, and that when I was working with Martin was the biggest thing. I remember having calls from like, oh, like I'm doing X, Y, and Z, but still just wasn't doing that last thing that was probably going to move the needle. And that's exactly with the kind of guys that I'm working with. I have those exact same chats. You can do 101 different things, but all it takes is doing one thing, the right thing, and you're going to get 10x the result. How do you overcome it? But why? And it actually links into my next question. Is there something with the fear of success linked to this too? That they want this is the big goal they have,
Mhm.
and like they ultimately know you gave them the opportunity but didn't take it. Like, why do they hold themselves back when that is what
Yeah.
they say they want?
Well, the first thing we look at is how do you actually overcome it. So, like, can mantras and stuff help? Of course, if you say better things to yourself in the moment, it can help you over. It can help you to take action in that moment, but it doesn't help you to overcome it because there's no awareness, right? And the awareness and being able to identify it is the key first step for anyone, right? Being able to identify what is it I actually feel, what is it I'm saying to myself, why am I thinking this way, and being able to see how you're experiencing things and the perception that you're seeing it through. For example, for that guy, standing on stage probably felt like the worst thing in the world. For me, it feels like the best thing in the world. I pinch myself sometimes. I say, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. Holy shit. There's people actually paying me to come and stand on stage and speak for an hour and put me up in a hotel. Like, who created this? Surely this is breaking the rules. Surely someone's going to come and knock on my door and say, "Martin, the game's over. You don't get paid. You don't get paid for this stuff anymore." Okay, but that's two people that are experiencing something through completely different lenses, different perceptions. Okay, now for a lot of people, those perceptions are unconscious to them. No one gets up and says, you know what? Like Lee mentioned a second ago, I'll go 80% of the way there, but I'm not going that extra 20%. No one gets up and says, here's what I'll do to grow my business. But if someone offers me the opportunity to, pitch to an audience or speak on a stage, I'm not going to do that. It's unconscious. And it's only in those key moments where opportunity presents itself that people kind of realize, whoa, whoa, that's a bit of a flaw in my arsenal. Okay.
Yeah.
And whenever you can identify and you have awareness and you can bring that awareness, you can say, you know what? Yes, I'm afraid of putting my head on the chopping block. I'm afraid of becoming more visible. And where a lot of fear stems from is the fear of, like Lee said, the fear of success. Because in order to achieve success, you have to be exposed in some way, shape, or form. Last year, whenever I was publishing my book, I held off on it for maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. With the book written, cover back, everything ready to go. I held off and I was thinking to myself, why am I holding off? And the reason I was holding off is because, right, I'm putting this book out there on how to change your mindset. And there's this, whoa, look at how far I've come. All right. And then there's also asking the question from a different perspective. Holy shit, look at how far I've come. So
Yeah.
look at how far I've come. Oh, I'm proud of myself. I feel amazing. But also look at how far I come. Now there's a lot more responsibility. Now there's a reputation uphold. And that fear of success can really crumble a lot of people because there's exposure, there's added visibility, there's your flying it. And your podcast is obviously called, about men masking themselves, right? That's where people then can start to wear the mask. They put on this mask because they feel they have to put this front up. But to go back to breaking the imposter syndrome and the fear, this first step is to identify and become aware. The second step is to see how you're interpreting those key moments and situations whenever it affects you the most. And then the third step is to interrupt it, interrupt the pattern. So for the work that we
Always.
do, there's 13 tools that we can use to interrupt the pattern to help people to break fear of failure, fear of success, imposter syndrome, fear of public speaking, whatever we need to get into on a micro level. And then you install new belief systems.
Yeah. It's phenomenal.
Incredible, man. I could listen to you all day.
You listen to him going to sleep, could you?
Yeah,
Lee, you
incredible.
probably have. You listen to audios on sleep.
I probably have, and I know Ellen still does as well. In fairness.
Yeah.
Incredible. So, yeah, I have a million questions, but I'll try and stick to the ones that we have. um, Purpose is one that I talk about a lot with my clients because going through a process of change is hard, But when you uncover one's purpose, you know, just with the skill set that I have, it's a great place for us to start. You know, I use things like the 5 whys. Going through the process of change, you're going to go through emotional discomfort, you know, and the purpose has to be bigger than the pain of the emotional discomfort. So the question is, for a man who has a good life but feels like he is drifting away from exactly what he does want, what is the psychological difference between having that life and the gap between having the life that he's living versus the life that he actually does want? Do you think it does again come down to a fear of failure or a fear of success, or do you think there's something else going on there?
Yeah, no, I don't think it comes down to any of those. I think it comes down to having a purpose comes down to like a deep human need. And it's like what I said a while ago about the guy with the car. And I said, does the car fulfilling? He says, a little bit. Okay. So when something fulfills you a little bit, it's because that wasn't really your purpose, right? Every single one of us has got human needs. And if you're not meeting those needs that you have and those desires that you really have, then it's going to create a void within your life. And a lot of people are not aware that when you look at these 7 needs, we have a need for certainty, we have a need for adventure, we have a need for status, significance. Like, you know, I want to feel important. I want people to recognize me. I want people to see me. I want to be seen. Okay. We have a need for growth, contribution. Every single one of us will prioritize those needs in a different order. So, for example, right, you could have a man and he's in a relationship with a woman for the last 20 years, and he's been a go getter. He's been the breadwinner in the household. He's been a go getter. He's always pushed himself. Maybe it's in sport. And then he picks up an injury, or he just hits that age where he steps away from sport. What happens to these guys? They start to feel a little bit lost. They start to put on a few pounds. They start to create negative habits within their life. Maybe it's gambling, maybe it's porn, maybe it's alcohol, whatever it is. But they're picking up these, you know, bad habits that are really starting to hold them back and move them further away from their actual purpose. All right. And the reason, and then the wife in the relationship, maybe she's happy. Maybe she's at home with the kids and she's the caregiver. That's what she's always wanted. She's visualized, you know, being in a position where she's got a secure home. She's at home with the kids. She can bring the kids up. She can spend the weekends going to the park and all of the rest of it. The reason being, they have the same needs. Okay. The three of us here, we've got the same needs, but we'll have them we'll organize them in different priorities. So, for example, in my career, my business, right, what gives me purpose? The biggest things that drive me is growth. To feel like I'm growing beyond myself all the time. If I feel like I'm not growing, then straight away I feel like I'm dying. So it creates a void within my life. So if I can't see any potential for growth anymore, then it's going to create a state of unhappiness. You know, there's a guy reached out to me last week and he said, I'm working in a gym for the last 3 years, but I just feel that I'm being used as a skivvy. It's like I'm just doing spin classes here and there whenever I'm needed, you know? And I feel like I'm being used as a bit of a skivvy. So when you see someone like that, he's in a state of unhappiness. He can't see opportunities, right? He's underestimating his own resources. This is all I can do. I can just be used as a skivvy for you know, ad hoc spin classes here and there. One of his big drivers in his career that stand out to me straight away is growth. Right? And growth is missing in his career right now because he's like, I'm so sick and tired of where I'm working. Why? Because there's no capacity to grow. All he can see is I'm just being used as a skivvy. He can't see a capacity to grow. He can't see I can step into a managerial role. I can manage one of the other gyms in the future. He can't see any of that stuff. So there's a lack of purpose in that particular area of their life. And for every single man, right? Like progress and growth is what keeps us happy, creates a state of happiness. Progress and growth, being able to see opportunities, being able to put time and energy into opportunities. But when you have a purpose and you understand what that purpose is driving at, it's progress on steroids, you know?
Yeah, I've got a question for you. So you mentioned like everyone obviously prioritizes different needs, and from what you said about that guy, without having the need for growth being fulfilled, the purpose wasn't there. And for someone who maybe was struggling, maybe they don't know what they need, they don't have any purpose, where do you start? Do you start by chasing purpose? Do you start by figuring out what you need? What avenue do you feel is the most productive?
Mhm. A really good question to start with, because again, that's work that we do. We do with our clients where we help them to understand their needs. So this is stuff where, you know, I had a lady, like, she was commuting, you know, 90 minutes each way a day to go to a job that she felt was secure and all of the rest of it. And she felt like, sure, I have to do this. I can't do anything else. she was disconnected from her needs. She did not know how to take those needs and organize them into different areas of her life of what was important to her, what was important in her relationships, and what was important in her career. And someone might listen to that and say, geez, man, that sounds like a lot of work. It's actually not when you understand the needs. But a simple way of finding, okay, where could I see more purpose in my day or in my life, right, is one of the best questions you can ask yourself. How do I want my day to look? How do I want my day to look? And the reason I say ask yourself that question is because if someone gets up and says, you know what, I'm going into a job today that I hate. I hate everything about it. I hate the people that I'm surrounded by. They're so negative. They pull me down. They're complaining all the time. You know, they're moaning all the time. I hate the environment that I work in, whatever it is that they don't like about their day. Then they're clear on what they don't want. Okay, don't want to work in an environment like that. If they get up out of bed and they're like, I'm tired of having no time to myself and not being able to prioritize my health. Well, now you're clear on what you don't want. So I don't want to be in a position where all my time is consumed. I don't want to be in a position where I'm working in a career that I hate. So now I'm starting to realize what would I like to change about those areas. And when you can start to readjust your day and focus on your day, you start to get clearer on what your purpose actually is. You know, for me, for example, like I said a while ago, I love speaking. I love standing on stage, I love speaking. It doesn't feel like work to me in any way, shape, or form. But I genuinely believe, right, having that level of impact and being able to contribute beyond myself, it gives me so much purpose in life that I get excited about it. Sometimes I struggle to sleep the night before because I look forward to it. And that's my life. That's my job. That's what I get paid to actually do. Okay. As well as coaching. And I've strategically designed and created that life by understanding who I am and understanding what drives me.
And that leads to the purpose. And it
And that
fulfills it.
lead,
It's
that
a self-sufficient circle, really.
yeah, and that's exactly it. And then what happens is when it's not broke, don't fix it. A lot of people again they go off and it's like, okay, I'm bored of this now, and they go off and they chase something else. You know, it's looking at what you have and being grateful for the things that are going well in your life right now. A lot of people could be living their purpose, but they don't actually realize it as well. You know.
Yeah. And before, I know you have something on the tip of your tongue, Dave, one last thing for me on this. I think a lot of that then, something that was said to me is like the life you're living now was probably, it's someone else's dream, but it was probably also the previous version of yours dream as well. Like for me, if I look back at what I did over the last year, like fucking 3 years ago, especially when I was working with you, Martin, I would never have thought that was possible. You know what I mean? But then it's on to the next thing. And like that, to move to Galway, that's the first thing as I did is how do I want my day to look? Out of bed, straight down to the beach because we're lucky to live more or less beside it. That's how I'll start my day, that's how I'll end it, and I'll figure out in between. But that's what I've identified that I need just to kind of start and finish, and whatever happens in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, you asked for it, you know, and sometimes whenever the stresses and the pressures and all that stuff can weigh down heavy when you are self-employed and you are running a business, you always just remind yourself, you know, I asked for this, but you're growing in alignment with it, you know. And for me, that's where a lot of your purpose really comes from, is you developing yourself as a person. Because it's like I said, you know, you can have the guy with the sports car, you can have the guy with the business, you can have the guy, you know, that he lives in a house where you have to change gears in the driveway, but it doesn't mean that he's fulfilled. It doesn't mean that he's leading from a place of purpose. It's whenever you grow in alignment with what you're actually building, that's when you feel most rewarded, both internally and externally, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Over to you, Dave. You can close it off and
Amazing.
whatever else you have to say.
Amazing. Just to be clear, lads, we've 5 minutes. Is that what we have?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, 5 or 10 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Crack on.
Quick one, and then Lee, you can finish it out. But Martin, if you were to give a man or woman one mental performance tool that would have the highest leverage on everything else, behavior change, consistency, energy, presence in the home with the family, clarity on decision making, what would it be and why?
That's a good
That's a
question.
tough question.
Yeah, it's not even a tough question. It's actually a really good question. It's an insightful question. You know, if you have one mental performance tool that can just give people what they want, really, because clarity, decision making, a good home life, It's all of the things that every single person wants, you know. And I would probably start off with, okay, focused on something really, really, really simple. And that's how you actually speak to yourself on a day-to-day basis. And the reason I say that is because you have a lot of people chase self-mastery. Okay. Self-mastery is, I want to be seen as someone who has this business and I'm the best at it. And you'll have two types of people achieve that. You'll have person one, achieve self-mastery, and people say, Jesus, look how much you've grown. You're doing so well in life. And he's like, yeah, you know, Jesus, I'm proud of myself. I'm really enjoying it. He just takes it on the stride. He doesn't feel that he needs to get out there and he needs to prove himself to people. He feels that he's proven himself to himself. And in it, he's happy with that, all right? And then you have the other person, okay, who feels like they have to still prove themselves to everyone. So they're successful on the outside, but internally they feel like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. Both people are trying to achieve self-mastery, but they're both doing it from different places. And that place is their self-esteem. It's how they think about themselves, how they feel about themselves. And what you say to yourself on a day-to-day basis is the key thing that dictates how you actually feel about yourself. Like if I say to myself, I like myself. If I say to myself, I'm successful, right? I feel it. It's that statement, okay, sends a message down to my physical body where I start to take up that posture. If I step on the stage to speak and I say to myself, I'm so confident, I'm going to absolutely blow the audience away here now. My energy my body starts to take up that vibrancy, starts to take up that level of energy. And they're the key things that can start to help people to build their self-esteem. You know, for someone to just look at themselves in the mirror and say, you know what, I like myself. You know, I give my best at everything that I do. I'm always there to support other people. Simple things like that. It's building the person's self-esteem first and foremost. Our book is called Change Your Jacket, and it's called it for a specific reason. Sometimes you have to let go of something before you step into something new. And for a lot of people, building their self-esteem can feel a lot harder than what it actually is. The reason it feels harder is because they're not letting go. They're not letting go. They're trying to take more on, okay, which again is like creating self-mastery, but from the wrong place, because they're not letting go of what truly holds them back. And it's like you mentioned a while ago, fear, imposter syndrome, and all of these things, you know. So how you speak to yourself and make that a consistent action on a day-to-day basis is probably one of the best, most leveraged, simple tools that you can utilize to start creating change within your life.
Love it. Powerful. Amazing, Martin. Thank you very much, man.
Great question.
All right, Lee.
It's a really good
Take it
question.
away, bro. Thank you.
We've one to finish with, Martin. Okay. If a man is listening to this right now and they recognize themselves in one or every or all of what we've talked about, so the imposter syndrome, the failures, the gap between who he is and maybe where he wants to go or who he even could be, what is the one thing and just the one thing you would want him to understand before this episode ends?
To how we started this episode, Lee, with how you introduced me and how you introduced your journey as a result of working with us, all right? The fear, the imposter syndrome, the I'm not good enough, the what if someone says no, all of those, the self-doubt, the hesitation, the avoidance, all of the things that men experience on a day-to-day life. What's it actually stopping you from doing? Like, why would you even want to overcome that stuff in the first place? Why would someone bother committing their time to listening to a podcast about fear, about rejection, about imposter syndrome? I'll tell you why. Because number one, they're not happy where they are. Number two, they want more. Okay, they want more than where they currently are right now. And any man that's listening to this, I'm telling you, you're capable of more. You're capable of tapping into potential. You're capable of creating the life that you want to have. You're capable of operating on the level that you can operate on. But you have to make the decision. You have to make the decision to let go of what's holding you back and step into new. It's like the guy I mentioned who I met in the foyer at the event. He said, no, maybe I'll pop her a message on LinkedIn. He missed the opportunity. Okay. Now, the potential is already there. That was a moment, right, that was orchestrated, that came into his life and said, here's your opportunity. And the question is, are you the man that's ready to accept that opportunity? And unfortunately for him, the answer in that moment in time was no. You've presented me with the opportunity, but I'm not the man that's ready to grab it and accept. And for anyone that's listening to this, okay, you want to let go of those things that are holding you back so that you can accept your potential whenever it is presented to you, you know?
And with that guy with the opportunity, someone I look back over the last 10 years, some of the biggest and best times in my life have come from the most innocent of decisions or opportunities that I just went for. Say, similar to that guy, I definitely wasn't what I wanted to do. But I can nearly pinpoint most of the significant changes for my life have been contingent on the tiniest little thing, the most innocent little thing at the time that I never thought too much of, but it changes the whole trajectory of where you're going. But, and I'd echo what you said there, a lot of that comes down to is just take that chance if it comes, just embrace the discomfort. Because the worst that can happen is you stay where you are.
Yeah. And it's not even those like small things where it's like, Jesus, like, you know, it's just this little thing that other people would overlook. That's your potential being presented to you on a plate. And we all get those opportunities every single day. But a lot of men go through their day and they don't create that level of awareness. You know, a great tip I got in the past was, Martin, if you go through your day and you ever see when they're passing a police car on the motorway, even if you're not breaking the speed limit, like you sit up that little bit more, you check your seat filters on,
Yeah.
you pretend you're not drunk, even though I don't even drink. But still, it's kind of like you're looking out the windows in to try and make eye contact with the guard to make it look like you've got your shit together, you know. But that's awareness. It's like, right, no, I'm aware because there's a cop car there and they're checking speeds. You become super aware in that instant, and then what happens once you pass? You go back to being a million miles away, and you're no longer aware of all of these little things that could be happening for you in your day-to-day life. You know, and there's three things that keeps a man or anyone in a state of unhappiness. It's overlooking opportunities, it's underutilizing their own resources, who they already are, what they already have that they can utilize, and it's overestimating what could go wrong. And that's where most people stay stuck, is on the third, overestimating what could go wrong.
Yeah, unbelievable. Dave, you went dad?
Say that again.
Have you anything to add?
No, man, just in awe. Absolutely love it. Just incredibly valuable. I know Martin is short on time, so I just want to thank you, Martin, for jumping on the podcast. This is episode 6, and just to have someone as valuable as you to give your time to me and Lee and to the 20 people who will listen to this, and hopefully it's 20,000 in a few years' time. We just want to say thank you, man. Honestly, that was incredibly valuable. That was 43 minutes of therapy for me, and 43 minutes of therapy of anyone else who wants to listen to it, man. But it's definitely food for thought, and it's exactly the kind of topics that we want to be talking about on the podcast, man. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, from me, Lee, and anyone else who's listening. So thank you.
Yeah, Dave, I appreciate that. Really appreciate it.
Legend.
One last thing, Martin, for anyone who may want to learn more about what you do, how you operate, or even just think that they want to be part of your team, your community, where can they find you?
I suppose where you're probably going to promote this is going to be Instagram. So the easiest place you can find me is there. It's Martin.Brady_. So I used to have a big tagline after that, but I got rid of that because, again, you don't want to just base your identity on one area of your life. So it's Martin.Brady_ is where you can find me on Instagram, guys.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Martin. Dave, that is it for today, and we will catch you guys next week.